Hello, Nate Streeter, Paperboy Printing and Distribution, StreetSmart Marketing. Again here with Steve Lundgren.
Hey folks, how you doing?
And we're continuing our review. This is actually our last one, I believe, right,
Yeah,
Steve?
it's the end of the series.
Kind of a summary.
The book review.
Yeah, by Mike
Michalowicz.
Yep, there you go. I almost got it now by this one.
Yeah.
We took some of what Mike really talks about in his book and we summarized it with some of our own ideas. And a lot of these ideas are from other books that many of you have read, like E-Myth or Traction or Rockefeller Habits, or a variety of different ones that are popular that we love you guys reading.
Yeah.
But many of these concepts are concepts that the Pumpkin Plan talks about. We just sort of put it into a format that we'd like a little better.
Right.
But the question really, I think, at the end of this book, and one that Mike talks about in this book and his first book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, he hints at a lot of these, is what is a real entrepreneur?
Yeah, is it different than being self-employed, or what's the difference?
It is. It absolutely is. And I think you and I, in fact, we sort of started this conversation before we hit record, right? I mean, talking for on and on and on, and it's like, maybe we should start this thing.
Yeah, we should record this. It's good.
But there's nothing wrong with being self-employed. I think that's one thing, for instance, I think you and I both agreed on, we don't like about E-Myth, is this sort of makes this assumption that if you're a technician and, you trade dollars, going to
Point
A here, someone who trades dollars for hours, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. And it also isn't necessarily the path to death and unhappiness.
Right. Just recognizing who you are and how you fit.
For some people, though, it definitely is. If you have, my grandma and I, we always kind of joke, it's like a disease if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Most of us who have the disease, we know we have the disease.
There you go.
So, if you can't stop thinking about how to improve anything, not just business, that's generally the thing. But let's say, I'm like, Steve, I have a little confession to make. When I come in the house and I need to microwave something to eat for lunch, let's say.
Yeah.
And I need to get the mail, and I need to do this. Let's say there's 5 tasks.
Okay.
I'm thinking about how to do all 5 of those tasks in the most efficient way possible. Okay, that's how entrepreneurs are.
Yep.
So I think, okay, I got to go get the thing in the microwave first, because then I got 45 seconds to go get the mail, throw it away, put this away. Then by the time that dings, see, if this sounds like you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So it looks like we've got about 6 points here that are like a diagnosis for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so if you do want to be an entrepreneur, I guess that's where we're going with this, right?
Yeah.
You cannot be trading dollars for hours.
Yeah.
That is not an entrepreneur.
Right.
Entrepreneurs don't trade dollars for hours.
Yeah.
And that really leads into B. Well, how do they not trade dollars for hours? It's because they empowers other people around them to do the work.
Right.
And I think you and I have talked about in my first business, I remember, you overhear your employees sometimes say stuff, and they're critical maybe of you not doing things.
How come you're not doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And that the boss is just sitting, up in the corner office and out in the afternoon playing golf or whatever.
Sipping cappuccinos.
And I get it. There's some real criticism, particularly in corporate America, probably, why people might have that. But the truth is, it took me a couple years to realize, they just don't see the big picture.
Yeah.
I can't be doing the work, otherwise I can't lead. If I'm doing the work, well, it's the old adage we say over and over and over again. You can't work in it.
Don't work. Yeah. Don't.
Yeah. You can't be working on it if you're working in it. Right.
Point C looks like.
Yeah. Point C. So, you can't have both. It's very difficult. Because if you're working, if you're trading dollars for hours and you're working in it, you're likely not going to have the energy to work on it and empower others around you.
Right. So
it's also not scalable, and that's the problem. Usually, if you have a successful business, and this is the part where I agree with E-Myth. If you have a successful business, it will grow.
Yeah.
Well, you need to figure out then how to empower others around you to do the work.
Right.
And so
if it's just you can't grow it because you're gonna have to clone yourself or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so a lot of people do get stuck at those stages, and that's sort of what happens here. And I think the Pumpkin Plan does a good job of talking about some of those concepts. This point D is huge, and this is a great point that Mike brings out in his book that I do think a lot of other, and recognizing that some opportunities are distractions. Forget some, most opportunities are distractions. Okay, if you want to grow a giant pumpkin or a giant business in this case, you have to have focus.
Right. And I was going to say, this one really keys back into the book because it's about the vine and seeing some of those small pumpkins and little trailing branches and things and cutting that stuff off because they are distractions. The real opportunity is the giant pumpkin.
Exactly. And a real entrepreneur understands that.
Yeah.
I'm again, my first business, I swear to you, it seemed like every week I had people coming into my office pitching me ideas and stuff. And I was way too susceptible to do stuff than I am now. I tried so many different things. Our product, different products that we offered were vast and wide. And I look back and it's like, oh my goodness, I lack so much strategy. I'm embarrassed almost about it.
Yeah.
But back in the early 2000s, that was where I was at.
Right.
And I didn't really understand this. And if you can get this, holy smoly. Figure out where you have your core competencies, where you're passionate. This is sort of talking about some of the other videos that we made throughout this. But I actually would look at every opportunity with a huge level of skepticism. Because again, going back to one of our previous presentations, everything is about execution. Opportunities are everywhere. I could, quite frankly, I could start 20 different businesses right now. There's no shortage of opportunities. I mean, that's part of living in the United States, I guess, there's a million opportunities. So just recognize that the vast majority of everything you're going to see is just going to be a distraction.
So how do you analyze that? So maybe the person that's maybe back where you were, they've got all these opportunities and they've got all these irons in the fire and stuff they're doing. How do they analyze that situation and maybe with some clarity? Yeah,
so I think Mike is good about this. He says, hey, you need to figure out where your best customer and let's kind of go back to that a little bit here. I think we have that in a slide where your best customer and your let's see. I'm sorry here. I'm going to.
You're looking for that chart?
Yeah, where your best customer and your core competency intersect.
Oh, right. There
that's your best seed, right? Mm-hmm. And he's talking about having a laser focus. If you want a giant pumpkin, you got to have this kind of focus, right? Going back to this one. And so, I think that's part of it. Is that the opportunity is growing squash, or whatever, right? Yeah. Well, that takes you away from your ability. You're not going to have as much resources to put water into your pumpkin. Mm-hmm. Not as much fertilizer to put into your pumpkin. Not as much time. So I think that's part of it. Now, with that said, I work with plenty of you guys who have 6 businesses. I get it. But you are an advanced level. Right. You are not my typical customer, nor are those the typical entrepreneurs out there. You guys have got this second point to a T, and you've empowered others at an expert level and are able to have multiple businesses then. Right. This is absolutely possible. It's just that you are an expert level. You've been able to empower others to manage your businesses for you, and I applaud you for that. But most of you aren't at that level.
So obviously those opportunities aren't distractions because
for them.
That's not distracting
right.
them. Yeah.
It could be. It could be. But still, one of the most successful entrepreneurs that I've talked to in the last few years, I remember I asked him, I said, well, listen, you've got all these successful businesses. What's the secret? You know what he told me? He said, you know what, Nate, 60% of the businesses that I've ever started have failed miserably. Mm. He said 40% have done pretty good. And, a very small percent have done very good. He said, you know what the secret is? I try to get the bleep away from the bad ones as quick as I possibly can and try to put as many resources as I possibly can into the ones that are good.
There you go.
That's what he told me. And that's no different than this.
Right.
Or even the pumpkin plan, right?
Yeah.
Is put your resources where, and he recognized that a lot of opportunities really weren't, and get away from them as quick as you possibly can. So, now I think, you could be maybe a little more strategic, but not always. Sometimes it is just about throwing crap against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, maybe point E kind of directs us there.
Yeah, so, have a vision for the future that's different than the past. And I think we talked about that a little bit with the org chart and with some of the other things we've talked about throughout. You have to have a vision with where you want to go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to be surprising to me that you're stuck at $600,000 in sales the last 5 years. If you don't have a clear vision, what you want to be.
Right.
I'm always surprised, when I meet with people and, you're going to aim for what you shoot for every time.
Yep.
So you don't have any clear idea of what you're shooting for. Well, it makes perfect sense to me that you haven't made any progress then.
Yeah, if you're not hitting what you want, you got to adjust your aim.
Yeah. So, again, this point F kind of brings into what you're talking about too, Steve, is matching your core competencies to the market and to the best customers. That's really what that is. It's about understanding your best customers. It's about understanding what else is out there. So when I use the word market, what I'm saying is it's much more complicated than Mike talks about. Perhaps maybe he does. I don't want to let's give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's more complicated than just understanding your best customer. It's also understanding what your customer or your competitors are offering, where you fit into the whole bigger picture, the whole market.
Yeah.
But your core competencies and matching those. And a real entrepreneur gets that too. I meet with so many people, they have no clue really how they fit into the big picture. And that usually is a big red flag for me. This is sort of 6 red flags, I would almost call them, for me when I meet with people.
Yeah.
They don't have a good vision for the future. They don't really understand how their core competencies fit in the market. I mean, these are just big symptoms of people who have major strategic problems, and probably there might not even be real entrepreneurs. They're certainly not thinking like successful entrepreneurs.
Right. And it might be more than just a kind of knowing where you fit in the market, but communicating that to your customers.
Oh, absolutely.
That they understand where you fit and that they relate, when the way you're positioning yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, communicating it is half the battle.
Yeah.
So, if you need help with this, I know so many of you do. We can help you move away from this. I think Steve and I, we've talked about it. Well, another thing we don't like that much about E-Myth, the pumpkin plan's a little better with this. This is not something you likely would solve in 8 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Or in a weekend, like go take a strategy, like a
seminar.
Yeah, exactly. Like we recognize to see transformation in a business. Your business has been at 600, 1,000, or 2 million for 5 years. You feel like you're hitting a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
You've already recognized that these 6 things we're mentioning here, you're kind of thinking like, gosh, half of these are me.
Yeah, it's going to be incremental, but that's another topic.
It could take you 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. I mean, it's hard to get the ship moving in a different direction sometimes, but you can do it. And we're here to help. Give us a call, send us an email, connect with us on Twitter. We'd love to chat with you and find out more about your specific needs and perhaps how we can help.
Yeah, if you know somebody who this information is good with, share it with them.
Yeah, we love that. That's the biggest compliment we can have. So we'd love if you could share this video and this content with others, and of course like our video.
Yep.
So we look forward to talking to you. We will talk next time.